Limit is y goes to negative 1 of y to the fourth minus 1 over y squared plus 6y plus 5. The first thing we're going to do is plug a negative 1 in for all of the y's. In the numerator, negative 1 to the fourth minus 1. In the denominator, negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 plus 5. In the numerator, negative 1 to the fourth, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, times another negative 1 is negative 1, times yet another negative 1 is back to positive 1. It's a positive 1 minus 1, divided by negative 1 squared is a positive 1. 6 times negative 1 is a negative 6 plus 5. In the numerator, 1 minus 1 is a 0. In the denominator, 1 minus 6 is a negative 5 plus 5, which is also a 0. We have the 0 over 0 indeterminate form. Since these are power functions, we're going to try to do the factor and cancel method. So we will have limit is y goes to negative 1. The numerator is actually a difference of squares, though this time it'll be a y squared and a y squared, since it's y to the fourth. And it'll be y squared plus 1 and y squared minus 1. The denominator will be a trinomial factoring. It's got the 3 terms. It'll factor into a y and a y. We need 2 numbers to multiply to be positive 5 and add to be a positive 6. Well, since they're adding to be a positive 6, they need to both be positive. 5 is a prime. Its divisors are only 1 and 5, so we definitely have a plus 1 and a plus 5. We now have it factored somewhat. We are still ending up with 0 over 0, though we don't have any factors that can cancel just yet. Be careful, these 2 factors cannot cancel because the one in the numerator has a y squared and the one in the denominator is just a y, so they actually don't cancel. And that isn't the one that's making the 0 in the numerator anyway. The 0 is being made here. Negative 1 squared is positive 1 minus 1, that's a 0. And then in the denominator, it's the y plus 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is also a 0. So those 2 are still making the 0 over 0. But they can't cancel just yet. They're not of the same form. And that's because this one here can actually factor further. And that's what we're going to do, is factor that one further. So limit as y goes to negative 1. The y squared plus 1 we're going to leave alone. The y squared minus 1 is a difference of squares and can factor further into a y plus 1 and a y minus 1. The denominator is fully factored. We will just rewrite that again, y plus 1 and y plus 5. And now you can see that the 0 over 0 is being made by these y plus 1s, which can cancel. I cancel those out, and we no longer will be encountering the 0 over 0 problem. So I'll just rewrite this. Limit as y goes to negative 1 of y squared plus 1 times y minus 1 over y plus 5. We can now try plugging the negative 1 in for all of the y's. Negative 1 squared plus 1 times a negative 1 minus a 1 divided by a negative 1 plus 5. In the numerator, negative 1 squared is a positive 1 plus another 1 is a 2. Negative 1 minus another 1 is a negative 2. In the denominator, negative 1 plus 5 is a 4. In the numerator, 2 times negative 2 is a negative 4 over the positive 4. The 4's can then cancel, and the result is negative 1.